Hello and welcome to Saturday night. Now we're talking, and it's been a wet few days here in Manchester. Rain has been coming down faster than Nutella share prices. But worry not, we've got a packed show for you. Don't forget, we want to hear from you. You can get in touch with the show by texting us on 07 548 200 007, starting your message with the word talk, or you can tweet us at That's Manchester using the hashtag NWT. But join me on the sofa today to discuss everything from Robbie Williams' ticketing scandal to the humanitarian crisis in the NHS is Tory activist Stephen Wood and writer and poet Danielle Matthews. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank
Hello
you.
there.
Right, let's come to you first, Stephen. Welcome back to the show. I haven't seen you since Christmas. How was it?
Not as good as yours by the sound of things, because you went away, didn't you?
Yes, I went away to Malta, but I'm sure you had a good time. Now, you invite Father Christmas into your life, I believe.
Well, I am Father Christmas.
You are Father Christmas. Yes. Now, Danielle, you're a writer and a poet. Tell us a bit more about that.
I've been writing, performing for about 2 years. I've got a book in with the editors at the minute, my first full-length collection.
Book?
Yes.
Tell me more.
It's just a collection of poems about mental health issues that I've written over the last couple of years, and it's called Asylum.
I'd like to read
honestly,
that. Sounds
when it's
good.
out, everyone will know. I will tell everyone ever.
Well, you heard it here first.
Exclusive.
Right. Okay, anyway, let's find out what's been happening in the big news this week. The British Red Cross has faced fierce criticism this week for stating that the NHS is facing a humanitarian crisis. The charity, whose volunteers are supporting the service, made the statement after 2 patients died after a long wait and a third was found hanged in a suspected suicide. In a heated Prime Minister's questions, Theresa May described the comments as irresponsible and overblown, with many NHS staff suggesting that the term humanitarian crisis was far too strong. Mike Adamson, Chief Executive of the British Red Cross, says that he stands by his remarks, stating that he had a duty to expose failings in health and social care services. So do the comments help further the NHS debate, or did the Red Cross go too far with their remarks? Now, did you see the story? What did you make of this?
I tweeted about it, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I always see this as coming up to every election or at Christmas time, it's Labour's political football. So they always love to say how bad the NHS is and stuff like that. It's a busy time of year. We know we're stretched for many different reasons. And the story came out with Mike Adamson, who's the CEO, yes, of the British Red Cross, who I might add he pays himself a basic salary of £170,000 a year. And if you look at his tweets, because I've researched him a bit this week, and for the last 12 months he's always on about humanitarian issues. So that's his sort of like catchphrase of the year for him. So I just think the press have picked up on that. I mean, he's been saying this about the NHS for the last month, to be fair. So, but they picked it up now when the NHS is at its most stretched period, and piggybacked on the back of that.
But isn't that, it's obviously, like I say, we've been saying it for a month, but it does highlight it at a busy time of year, but then isn't that when it's supposed to be highlighted? The issues are going to continue year round, but when they are especially bad, it does just throw up highlights on which areas are especially crippled potentially, and that's why maybe it's important to say it now.
Yeah. What did you make of the terms though? Because when we think about a humanitarian crisis, we think of things like Yemen, we think about the refugee crisis. Was that the right terms to be used?
I think in popular parlance, humanitarian crisis, you do think abroad, big issues going on, you know, massive scale, weather issues, hurricanes, etc. But you look at what it actually means then you look at it here, the NHS is a humanitarian crisis because it's what's affecting a large body of people on an everyday basis. The NHS stretches from GP appointments up to surgery. Everyone uses them all the time, and it does affect everyone when that service doesn't work.
Yeah, we all rely on the NHS, yes,
exactly.
and we need it to be free at point of service, which, you know, I'm sure that's going to remain the way. But you've got to look at the way the NHS is running. It's hemorrhaging money like there's no tomorrow. And to throw a load of money at it now without fixing the problems isn't going to solve anything.
Do you think that facts like those are lost behind the headlines? Because when they
love to sensationalise things, don't they? So humanitarian crisis in the NHS. I don't. think it's a humanitarian crisis as such, because you do. I think of like thousands of people homeless or hungry, you know, overseas. That's a humanitarian crisis. But we're splitting hairs there, really, I suppose. But they love to. I think they love to sensationalise it.
It gets people looking at the issue, maybe for the wrong reasons, but at least people are looking.
Well, I'd agree with that. It's always good to talk about it and then try and come up with a solution. But unfortunately, the Labour Party's solution over the years were, all right, we'll throw money at it, but don't fix it. And we try and fix the Conservative Party. When I say we, they try and fix a problem, and then they get shouted out for, oh, they're trying to privatise it. When in fact, if you look at that's another can of worms anyway. If you look at the privatisation, when you talk about outsourcing from what it was in 2010 under Labour, which was 4.9%, to the current levels, which is only 5.4%, there's only 0.5% difference between a Tory government running the NHS or a Labour government running the NHS. And we're doing it for two different reasons. We're doing it to get best value for services and make our pound go further. Labour did it before 2010 to cook the books. So two very different reasons there for outsourcing in the NHS.
So what did you make of the Prime Minister's questions? Because it was quite a heated debate, wasn't it? Do you think that the rhetoric that's being used is the right kind of rhetoric? Should they be debating the actual issues or talking about the headlines?
Well, they should be saying how we're going to sort the NHS out. It's all right, yeah. Well, if the Prime Minister saying, yeah, well, it does need a bit more money actually, but they've got to fix the problems that are within the NHS.
I think that's the problem. Everyone tends to finger point, and you have so much time trying to shift the blame, trying to make someone stand up and say actually it's their fault, that you don't actually have time to discuss the issues.
Yeah, well, Theresa May wasn't saying it's anyone's fault. She says we do have a problem, and she's going on about mental health and health social care and things like that. It does need more money in them areas. But we've got to look at how we deliver that and get best value, best value for money.
Now, last year, Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott called for the debate on the NHS to transcend party politics. Speaking at a Labour Party conference event, she said, on one hand, we have to debate about the NHS, which should be above politics, but on the other, there is nothing more intensely political than citizens' healthcare. So has the NHS become nothing more than a political football, and is it time that it was run by a body separate from politics? Now, the NHS, as we were talking about before we came on the show, it started life as a kind of cross-party thing. Do you think it needs to go back to that?
Well, definitely. It still is a cross-party organisation, really.
You wouldn't think it, would you?
No, because people use it for political purposes. But they should get round together and round the table together and say, look, how are we going to take this forward? Try and put it to one side. But my experience over the last 6 years, whilst I've been involved in politics, I've seen Labour use this as a political football too much, and they need to get over that bit. And because they won the 1997 election on the lies behind the NHS. When Blair first came to power, that was the topic that took him over the line, and they formed the government.
When it comes to politicians, do you trust them to run the NHS?
I don't think they should.
Well, they don't run the NHS.
Involved in the way of funding. I think it should be mainly run and implemented, like you say, the way the services are implemented. Yeah. Surely the best people who know that are the people working within it.
Yeah.
Going back, should it be an independent body that deals with the NHS, or should it be?
You're getting more people involved and more wages going out for someone else to take over. You know, they need to sort out who the people are at the top and cut out the pen pushers.
If they're worth their wages, if you're saying they need to look at the problems and solve the problems.
It's a good Tory point, this.
If someone can come in and be worth that wage to sit there and be specialised in that area, then I think it doesn't have to be a
Well, I have a big issue with people being worth the wages. When you get these CEOs, like the CEO of the Red Cross, for instance, paying himself a basic salary of £170,000 a year, the Prime Minister's not on that much money, and she runs the country.
But
so
don't we need someone to be accountable? While we've got politicians who are supposed to be accountable, they're actually throwing the blame on the Labour or Conservatives. Who is accountable, and are they going to actually give us some straight answers?
Well, the government's accountable for what happens in the NHS.
But do they give us straight answers?
Well, there's people. I don't know if you've been watching on the TV. They've been showing the Select Committee looking at the NHS, and they've had the NHS bosses rolled out and to answering questions and stuff like that. But that was a bit of a circus in itself, watching that. I was quite shocked at the attitude, first of all, the attitude of the MPs asking the questions, and then the attitude and replies of some of the health service bosses. I thought, this is not a good example, really, to be set for the country. This needs reining in. We need to be serious about it.
Do you think there is a divide between the NHS bosses and politicians, you know, because of what's been happening last year?
Well, from my experience, the people in the background, these civil servants, seem to think that they're above the politicians at times. We've just seen the guy from the European Union, our ambassador to Europe, that resigned his position and come out with some terrible statements condemning MPs. And the MPs take the brunt of it all at the end of the day. But the civil service, some of these higher level civil servants, I've got a lot to answer to.
I think it's a bit of both, really. I think obviously there will be some in both positions that shouldn't be there, and I think that's part of the problem, really. It's people in the wrong positions making the wrong decisions for the wider group.
Makes you wonder who's really running the show.
Yeah.
Now, we're fast running out of time, but what do you think is the future of the NHS? Do you think it's bleak, like a lot of people say, or is it just, you know, service as usual?
It's going to carry on. You know, they're struggling in some areas, but they do need to overhaul it. But they need to get together, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and agree a way of overhauling the NHS. And don't be scared of outsourcing a bit more to get better value for money. But that's not necessarily privatising.
Right, that's all the time we've got for in this section.
Sorry.
Join us after the break when we're finding about the Robbie Williams scandal, season 3.